Welcome to Dayton, Ohio, USA. Thank you to the Future of Education Conference organizers, the University of Dayton, and especially to the other faculty, students, and most of all, community partners who have made the work I'll share today a reality. Today, I'll summarize a chapter published in the spring of 2020 in the edited collection, Diverse Pedagogical Approaches to Experiential Learning, seen here. What set this book apart from others on cross-disciplinary teaching was really the focus on case studies and strategies, along with personal reflections. For lack of time, I'll condense my case study and reflection here, and for the sake of relevance, I will also offer some views on what has happened in the tumultuous year since this was published, as to how the pandemic and movements around racial justice have affected the project, which is Dinner in the Desert Kitchen, an example of project and community-based experiential learning, as well as social justice teaching that strives to effectively embrace an intersectional and anti-racist approach to pedagogy. Before we begin, I ask you all listening from your homes or your spaces throughout the globe to imagine a desert right here on this blank slide. So you may conjure a vast, dry area hostile to human life, void of architecture, free of traffic and noise, perhaps something like this, which is a shout out to my own origins in the deserts of sunny Southern California. So as we gaze at what for me is a nostalgic image, I now ask you to imagine a food desert, which may look more like this photograph made by my student Maria Mejia of an abandoned supermarket not far from our university. Though this area is a food desert, the image does not accurately portray the presence of both people and food in these areas, where unhealthy goods and fast food are often abundant. Food deserts are defined by the United States Department of Agriculture as largely, quote, impoverished areas where residents lack access to fresh, whole foods. So food deserts are not the result of nature, but of man-made systems of historic disinvestment, largely targeting people of color, Indigenous people, and the poor. This slide shares designed by my colleague, Misty Thomas-Trout, and further defines the government designation of food deserts as low-income tracts where the nearest access to whole foods is a half a mile in urban or 10 miles in rural areas. Bear in mind that in the US, public transportation can be limited, and residents of these areas often lack access to private transportation. The term food desert has actually come under some needed scrutiny in recent years, partly because it evokes lack, barrenness, and natural causes. In fact, many food deserts are indeed vibrant communities. For example, here you see events near my current home in a Dayton food desert. These are connected to Gem City Market, a community partner I'll soon discuss. You see, I hope, people having a good time and not suffering in the least from heat stroke or visible starvation. So what I am resisting is representing food insecurity with the kind of pitiful visions often associated with the notion of poverty porn. I instead offer representation of community resilience. But in also resisting such notions, many food justice advocates have taken the lead from Dara Cooper to use the term food apartheid. Though this term evokes the South African system of political oppression and may feel like hyperbole to some, its use is based on research showing that a majority of American food deserts are indeed the result of systematic discrimination on the basis of race. So Cooper mentions here the hypersaturation of destructive foods, predatory marketing, and the corporate controlled food system. Her quote is placed next to another design by Thomas-Trout, whose specific focus on Dayton as a city in progress brings me to 2014, which is when a loose collection of educators, students, and advocates formed Desert Kitchen Collective to raise awareness of food justice in general and our regional food insecurity in particular. And we felt that food provided a safe space for us to address more difficult conversations around race, privilege, and social equity. The we here at the outset was myself, another fellow artist, a critical race theorist, and an historian who were creating the University of Dayton's first undergraduate course on art and social practice. The image here is from our website and shows the logo created by graphic design major Grace Wolford to reference both Andy Warhol's pop art and the ubiquity of tin cans as non-perishable food items. The majority of our first student cohort is shown here, along with co-founder Dr. Ruth Thompson Miller, preparing an interactive installation back in 2015, which is when we discovered that Dayton ranked 4th in the US Food Insecurity Index, not an encouraging number. So in response, the students developed an outreach campaign to raise awareness of this issue on campus, and here are some of their design deliverables. I'll mention that this class also learned that Dayton bears another troubling distinction as the 15th most racially segregated US city. Our student demographic is predominantly white and economically advantaged, so our curriculum addresses this situation with individual and group activities designed to help our students and ourselves recognize and dismantle white privilege. Back in 2015, students were doing this work at the same time that educators were beginning to establish partnerships with the outside community, which takes time to build trust. And it was happening before students began working directly with these partners or with potentially vulnerable populations. So in our early work, you see fewer photographs of people and more representation of ideas through objects, graphics, and statistics. Of course, in these early days, I also had to work to define art and social practice. It's a contemporary genre that often resists categorical definition and which often leaves my colleagues in other fields a bit perplexed. So for this, I turn briefly to the Tate. Now, the Tate is an institution, and you see on this slide, I have underlined institutional critique. So bear in mind that like many practicing artists, I remain wary of any and all strict categories. I'll also point out that having people as the medium or material for a work is clearly problematic, but in general, I would agree that socially engaged art, a term I use interchangeably with social practice here, is definitely collaborative and participatory and intersects with related concepts shown on the right here. We also borrow from community-based participatory research, a multidisciplinary approach that prioritizes equity and asset-based collaboration among research partners. So since 2015, we have indeed worked to grow and nurture strong partnerships with the off-campus community to produce the annual event Dinner in the Desert Kitchen shown here. This is an art auction, exhibition, and dinner performance. As of 2021, we also partner with additional campus units, including a Sustainability Institute and a Human Rights Center. And our course, along with partner courses, now place pre-med, engineering, humanities, and natural science majors alongside artists and graphic designers to produce the event you see here. And those graphic designers are mainly responsible for the past promotional posters you see here. So my paper for this conference defines and summarizes our curricular process and assessment methods for this semester-long project with additional thoughts on fair trade compensation for community partners. But for the sake of time, I want to simply share some details about how the event works. Dinner in the Desert Kitchen has always taken place in an off-campus student art gallery, which is funded by my college and department. Our first exhibition partnered with Dayton Food Bank, whose mission is to relieve hunger by acquiring and distributing food. For this event, we invited a curated roster of community and campus leaders to a dinner experience that resembled a poverty simulation activity. Depending on the token they were given on arrival, some guests received expensive dinners from a high-end grocer. Others were given a lackluster meal provided by our university dining services, and the group representing the lower economic bracket dined on microwaved meals straight out of the box. So while food is served, guests sit at the table and break the ice with student-written activities around food culture. And for each event, meals are served on a themed, custom-designed ceramic plate like the one shown here. For this first event, each plate bears a statistic about food insecurity. So when guests finished their meals, they were often confronted with uncomfortable facts. Though this example is a bit more didactic than antagonistic, our audience is generally comprised of folks with economic access to food. So this tactic aims to strike a balance between comfort and provocation. Of course, we do want to ultimately establish rapport. So towards the end of dinner, we bring in food for everybody, which means both the invited guests at the table who received lackluster meals and the general audience who have been forced to wander the exhibit, wondering what's going on at the table to which they were not invited. So you see that moment here in the image that I showed before. In this case, the students brandish large platters of beans, rice, and tacos that were donated by a local immigrant-owned business. We often partner with organizations that serve immigrant communities or immigrant-owned businesses. So I want to point out that this food was given to us for free, and that a high-end grocer and another national franchise had refused to offer donations to us that year. And their reason was that it was a bad time of year, and that bad time of year was a few weeks before Christmas, which is a holiday that's recognized culturally in our community and religiously at our Catholic university. So in the spirit of that holiday, we also create a gift economy through offering small photographic prints in exchange for non-perishable food items. These edition of student photographs are shown here as well on the right. So this should provide a general template of our annual event and the specific kinds of art that the students produce. This is our 2017 event with a focus on water and sustainability. This is the year we began partnering more directly with Gem City Market, which was at the time a grassroots effort to open a market in a predominantly African-American neighborhood, the one I showed earlier. Here's our 2018 event, which focused on human rights violations happening along the US-Mexico border and partnered with additional community organizations working to secure immigrant rights. This event featured dinners from Latin American-owned restaurants and also live cooking by our partner, Manuel Hernandez from El Salvador. The pupusas, you can see him making here, basically stole the show that year. Finally, our 2019 event investigated the harmful legacy of redlining, a practice initiated by US banks in the 1930s that discriminated against Black and immigrant communities by denying or rigging access to home loans. You can see examples of these maps in both the interactive placemat on the table and on the student-designed poster. You also see the student-designed ceramic plate that bears statistics from redlining documents specific to Dayton, Ohio. And by this time in 2019, we had increased participation in the event, so projects were really flowing over into other classes and semesters. For example, in 2018, we had launched a magazine, Desert Dispatch. Here you see designs meant to appear in the second edition, which was meant to debut in April 2020. That did not happen. Instead, funding was frozen and students were sent home and we were all sent to Zoom screens. So this publication featuring stories from Gem City Market members and leaders has been placed on hold along with a number of in-person experiential learning. But that doesn't mean that faculty who do EL, experiential learning, are not responsible for continuing to nurture our community partnerships during a global pandemic. After all, Gem City Market, which had been set to open around February of 2020, was particularly impacted by increased food insecurity, as well as the murder of George Floyd, which produced a heightened awareness of racial injustice around the nation and the globe. This slide illustrates activities during the pandemic as organizers, educators, and community members came together at socially distant public events, private meetings, and Zoom screens to both protest and build community. And this led up to the market's grand opening shown here on the right less than 2 months ago. These two photos are not the exact same location, they are within the same area. And I placed them side by side to illustrate the shifts that occurred in Dayton since we began working with our food justice partners. Since 2012, Dayton has moved from number 4 to number 42 on the government's Food Insecurity Index. I am certainly not claiming that art and design in general or our EL project in particular were necessary for this shift. In fact, our methods deserve even closer scrutiny and development in order to combat racism, gentrification, and other harmful practices. What I do believe is that art and design can play a vital role in storytelling and community building, as well as spreading awareness. After all, history shows that the presence of art and culture are strong indicators of a community's well-being. As I conclude here with images of Gem City Market's grand opening event, I share the words of our project partner and community activist and Gem City Market Board President Amaha Selassie, who reminded us throughout this work that Gem City is, quote, not just a market, but a movement. We are grateful for the work of our partners in educating our students and our faculty and accompanying us on the lifelong work it will take to build a more just, equitable, sustainable, and resilient food system. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.